welcome. We'll call this meeting to order. This is an interim budget summary meeting to discuss the county budget. First, comment. First, I'd like to ask the invocation. So, Honorable Sir, if you'll give us the invocation.
Yes, sir. Let's pray. Gracious Father, we come before you this day, Lord, meeting as this group to serve our county. And Lord, we need your help. We need your wisdom. We need your discernment. So, Lord, we just ask you to be with us, to guide our thoughts and our voices, Lord. And Father, we just pray that you bring us together and for the best decision for our county. So we ask that you watch over us. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Very well. We'll stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. First item, Madam County Manager.
Okay, I'm just going to explain the information you have on your desk. I have it electronically, but I'm going to show it. This paper that's color coded, these are the salaries as of right now. It's for fiscal year 20 salaries. It does not include longevity or any overtime. It does include the library. It includes forestry, because when they give us their budget, that includes their salaries, and they break it down. You also have, in case anyone was wondering about the contract between EMS, you have a copy of that. You have one that looks like it has holes on the side. It is the approved fiscal year 20 budget, the revenue and the expenditures. And then you have a packet that says fiscal year 21 revenue worksheet. This is the recommended worksheet. The 20% from the 19 total, that is what this number is. It's the 2019 or fiscal year 19 revenue amount minus 20%. And then the expenditure worksheet, the two columns, the first column was whenever the department submitted their budget, and it was their full request with the salaries that was supposed to be awarded during the salary study and merit. This did not include their wants, because once I got that total, I didn't go any further to include any of their wants. The second column is when they were asked to do a 5% reduction from fiscal year 20. There is no salary increase and there is no merit awarded. There are a few areas that are highlighted, and those numbers were incorrect numbers once they did their 5%, such as with inspections, one of the lines went down to 1,600, but they did not factor in their software in that line. So those are not accurate numbers for some of these departments.
For the example you just gave us, so we don't, for inspections, we don't have a correct number.
Well, I have a correct number, but it's not on here. This was just letting you know what they thought their budgets needed to be. Then you also should have your interim budget that had been sent to you, and could you just give them? Yes. Okay. And then Kim gave you some loan options that we can discuss as well.
Very well. Thank you, ma'am. Any comments? Any concerns?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I may, sir, I think it'd be good for the county manager to state what's going on, the emails that have been received by the commissioners, and why we're here today and what we may be up against.
You have your interim budget And that is what I had sent an email instead of presenting a full, complete budget for fiscal year 21 based upon information that you were provided from the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, as well as in conjunction with the League of Municipalities, as well as information from the Department of Revenue. They were talking about interim budgets and budget shortfalls. NCACC gave a very large range of estimates for local sales tax use. They were told us to anticipate basically anywhere from a -10 to a -50%. And they tried to break it down by quarters. Kim and I had talked, we looked at it, and my recommendation is that we use the 20% reduction in sales tax revenue for the entire, just to anticipate for the entire year. Because even if you looked at it by quarter, as they did from July to September, they said between a 5% to a 40% reduction. October to December, 0 to 20%. After January, they said they didn't really know. There were lots of models. So I went with the 20% reduction. Once I did that, and I had already looked at what departments requested and made cuts, we still need $2 million, a little over $2 million. It's about $2.1 million. So that's why I'm recommending an interim budget for the month of July. Basically what that is it just allocates enough funds to pay salaries and benefits and to pay any contracts that we have already entered into, as well as power, water, those sort of things. Basically things to keep your lights on. It does not include travel, other than gas for the sheriff's office, that sort of thing. It does not include any departments going to any trainings, those sort of things. So it is a very bare bones budget. We will have to use our fund balance because that is what they have told us that we have to do. Kim and I have looked, and we feel like the $948,243 would be enough to cover our general fund budget for the month of July, because also two of the big bills that come due in July, auto insurance and workers' comp, and they are due in July. This is putting off paying any of our dues until August or September. And in fact, the School of Government sent out an invoice already, and they said, you can take 3 months to pay your invoice. Ours, I forget what ours went up to, but we have 3 months to pay it. So they're willing to work with counties so you don't have to make the payout all at one time, and the first payment was due in August. So you have before you the interim budget summary. We do not, as required for the normal budget, as a regular budget, have to show all of the revenue sources. All we have to do is show the fund balance available. So as you see, the total projected revenues for all funds is $1,115,732. And so therefore the appropriations for all funds equals $1,115,732. Kim and I have talked. Is this the best idea? We're not even sure, but we felt like it might give us a slight edge in going forward. I just got off a call with NCACC and all the county managers, and they have talked to the Department of Revenue. They said as a whole, now this is statewide, which of course they said then varies once you get down to county. It appears for the month of March, and they said keep in mind the stay-at-home order did not start until the end of March. The month of March, sales tax revenues were already down 5 to 10% statewide compared to March of 19. They will not give us the county breakdown, they said, until the end of May. Of course, they said anticipate a larger decrease for the month of April and for May. But Kim and I are hoping that if we get the numbers at the end of May, and then we get the the April numbers at the end of June, we can maybe have a better handle or a better guess, because I feel like that's kind of what it's gonna be, and that's basically what they said on the call today as well, as to what we are looking at going forward. It will also give us time to look into a few more options. We did listen to a conference call yesterday and today. To me, it didn't offer a whole lot more than what Kim and I had already thought about. As far as big cuts, there's a few other things that we can look into. I'm not calculating any numbers on any of my other ideas, because I wanted to hear what your thoughts were first about the interim budget, and then moving forward, what some of your thoughts are as well.
These are the thoughts that came to my mind while you were speaking, so I'll go ahead and get those. Do we have to have a hearing? No hearing on this?
No hearing for the
budget?
interim.
Okay. I heard you say that we could wait 90 days to pay some things, and what were those?
We don't have to pay all of our dues in July. Typically, we pay quite a few dues in July.
Okay.
But we did not budget for that in July. We're going to wait and pay them in August.
Okay. And I heard you say that, was that the same thing you were talking about? So you said people were willing to work with us?
Yes.
On the same thing. Okay. All right. Linda and I spoke yesterday, and I really hadn't thought about this till she brought it up. I was thinking that locally, our sales tax, our Gates County sales tax, our portion would probably not be as high as 20% reduction. But then Linda reminded me that the formula comes from the whole pool. So the Greensboro and the Charlottes and the Wake counties, those areas that the beach that give us, that inflate our number, that's what I think will actually be hurt more from those than we will locally. Just a point that Linda mentioned to me yesterday. I thought I'd just get that out there, because I hadn't thought about that until she mentioned it. Another thing, just when I'm thinking about the math, we're saying that when we're saying we need 2.1 million, you're talking about a shortfall.
Correct.
So if our overall budget is 12 million, 10% of that is a much smaller number. 20% of that is a much smaller number. So if we're talking about a decline or a shortfall of 20%, where's that 2.1 number?
That's based upon all of the lost tax revenue. We also did not budget the Medicaid hold harmless, which was 327, 329.
This year, we should have gotten over 400,000. We've gotten the majority of it in March. I think it was 390,000.
From hold harmless.
Yes.
Right,
Like
and
438 or something, is that it?
I think that'll be something like that would be the total if we get the remaining 10% in August for fiscal year 20. The problem is, even though we still may receive that money in 21, they're telling us not to spend it because we may owe it back.
Right.
So it's
I
not that we're
remember
not going
seeing
to get
that.
it, but
Gotta
So,
work toward that.
so we did not budget for next year because it is based on your sales tax. There's a formula, and I've never seen it. I don't know if Kim's ever seen it, but there's a formula that the Medicaid hold harmless is related to your sales taxes.
Right.
So,
It's a trade-off, according to the literature.
right. So based on a conversation Kim had with two people at the LGC, they recommended we just not budget it, be on the safe side. And then if we get it, well, then that's a good thing. And then we can go back and do an amendment and add that money back in. But like she said, if at the end of this fiscal year, when they do their calculations in Raleigh, and we shouldn't have even received what we have, we're gonna have to send that money back. We'll have to pay the state back. So we were being very conservative and did not budget that money. Plus, don't forget, last year with the DSS information, those numbers were reduced as well this year. So that money's not there because we had to make up that shortfall last year, so we still have that hole to fill again this year.
Those are the questions I had to begin with.
I've got to sort of piggyback off of Jack. Looking at the sales tax and the revenue, I only calculated 2.1 or 2.3 million is all we get in sales tax. So 20% of that's only $420,000.
You have to calculate the entire budget. Because if you're taking away all of your sales, if you're taking away the Medicaid hold harmless, some of the other revenues are also going down. But you also have to remember, so for example, there are some things that we think are not going to change for grants. That's part of that calculations. But
based upon my math, 420 and 376 for the Medicaid hold harmless is 800,000, which is a whole heck of a lot less than $2.1 million. That we
I
have
can
to
send you this spreadsheet because it's $2 million that we need a difference of.
Well, I know if you look with the information we've got from the state about motor vehicles and a variety of things, there are some delays, and with taxes and everything else, there's delays about when they're due. So that makes a difference about income coming in too.
Right, but paragraph 3 in the memo from May 4th says, based upon NCACC document, a 21% loss in revenue is being projected in sales tax for Gates County.
Right, but your whole budget is not based around sales tax. You also need to look at the property tax line. The projections that I have been provided by the tax department, less than what we had in the current fiscal year. So that's also a reduction.
Is that on this one, the FY?
Yes, if you look at, see what, and then you can compare it to the one for 19. There's a reduction there as well.
Of course, that has to be a projection.
Right, right. It's going from this year, basically 6.1 million to next year, 5.6 million.
So that's $500,000 right there.
And what is their rationale for losing $500,000?
It's based upon the calculations that Chris has provided, based upon the values that's in the tax system. And he can provide greater clarification on that, because when he ran the current year's numbers compared to, actually even compared to the numbers that I have been provided for this year, they were even different. They were lower than what had been projected. But he has, for example, real property, last year's budget was based upon $1 billion. He has projected $931,784.
Did you say billion with a B?
Yes,
So you meant 940 million.
yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
948, yes, 948,931,784.
So
Yes.
what is the the current tax property recommended was 6.1-ish last year.
Mm-hmm.
How much, Kim, do you have, I don't have the budget. How much have we collected this year in property taxes?
I was trying to pull that up and I can't find my icon on the laptop right this second. I'll keep looking.
And this is at a 97% collection rate for last year, for the current year, and for next year.
All right, now does this, so this decrease from 1 billion to 940 million is reval?
That would be a Chris question. He could better explain that. I don't want to attempt to explain because I will probably mess it all up.
Well, real property would be depreciation some, but I don't know about the,
That's,
but it's
that's
property.
60 million It's a $60 million difference in property values. Better.
And I would think property would go up, Jack, with new construction and
And Chris did give yesterday, we asked him a couple of questions about taxes. He didn't give a real ugly outlook, but he was trying to be conservative too, you know, which is to some degree is what we need to do.
Natalie, if you would, Mr. Chair, can I? You sure? Yes, sir. All right, thanks, sir. An email you sent, Fund 13, restricted money, I believe, I don't have that email printed out.
Oh, we don't have a fund.
I was gonna say, we don't have a phone.
2187, 23.
Are you talking about the
60.
courthouse or?
There's
The court-
20,
yeah, there was one,
21
the courthouse.
21 is the courthouse, 61 is water enterprise, 62 is solid waste enterprise.
The 21, it was an ordinance passed in 2013.
Correct.
Can you elaborate on that and
It was an
what's
ordinance,
left?
it was an ordinance passed, to put money into, basically kind of almost like an enterprise fund, a fund to restore the historic courthouse. And that's what and that money is already there. It's not tied to Fund 11 because we're not moving any more money into it. And there is some money left that I can't pull up now because I just pulled up did you find it, Kim? I pulled up the question he asked a while ago.
I don't know what's going on here.
I think it's.
I think I know about how much is left in 21 without looking that one.
Okay. It's 20,
I think it's between 39 and 40,000, I think is what's left. I can't remember how much is encumbered right now, but I think that might be the balance.
But you said that can't be touched because that was an ordinance that was
we
passed.
have to get rid of the ordinance and we still are getting some countertops. There's still a few spots that need to be repaired that were not repaired correctly the first time. For example, when there was a flash fire in the judge's chambers that blew the electrical panel off the wall, the person who repaired it did not do a good job. There's still a hole in the wall. So I have asked that can be fixed. There's one of the windows, like today, they were there repairing broken windows because that's not a good thing to be in a building.
Maintenance.
Mhm. So there's things like that that still need to be fixed. And at the back door, for example, anyone who comes in the back door, there's sand filling in a hole right now, but we need to level that off and either put some little cement pad there or some rocks. So there's some other countertops that need to be put in there for storage so we can get rid of some of the boxes that we have sitting around. Then of course, the question has been asked by a citizen recently, but also I've questioned, does the sidewalk, we had talked about the sidewalk out front. And a citizen asked me, if you fix the sidewalk on the side, why don't you fix the sidewalk in the front? It looks bad. So, but that'll be a question, that'll be something you'll have to decide. Do you want me to get quotes to fix it or let it look like it looks?
Well,
That sort of thing.
the optics, just the optics of spending some money, certainly if there's a broken window, we don't want water coming in or anything damaging the building. Probably some of that 40, we're going to think about using it for maybe paving the parking lot or something over there.
Crystal had asked me what we want to do. I said, nothing right now.
Okay.
We've cut down those trees. It still needs to be cleaned up. Timmy had said he's going to come back and clean up a little bit more.
I mean, even in last year's budget, even outside the courthouse, if there's anything that money already appropriated for, we could still put those things on hold and go back and reverse something if we, we're looking for money.
Mhm.
We could go back and reverse something, an ordinance or a budget amendment, and put that money, and I'm not just speaking courthouse,
Mhm.
anything, and put that money back in the general fund and say, hey, we need to wait until we can crawl before we start running on this project again.
Mhm.
I'm just throwing that out there, so
Right.
that's a possibility if we see that.
Right.
So,
And if you want to close out the ordinance, there is a process. I'll have to find it because we've not closed one out. But there is a process to close it out.
well, nobody wants the courthouse to look great any more than Jack. So I'm saying that from a commissioner standpoint. Personally, I'd like to see everything over there just shining and everything, but with the situation we're in, maybe we might have to crawl a little bit. So anyway, just to say that. So in my saying that, if you or Kim think, oh, there's a project over there that we could put on hold for a little while, please let us bring that up if one comes to mind.
Well, first of all, we've got to get accurate numbers about what's been encumbered with that.
Yeah.
There's some things that have already been encumbered that they were going to do.
Mhm.
The contracts have been left properly.
Right.
But we're talking, and Kim, I think it was about 86,500 as a 1 cent.
No,
It was close, that was what it was last year. Close to
last
it,
year,
something?
this year
83.
is $80,654.11.
80,654 and 11.
Yes.
So that's a 28 cent tax increase, which I'll never vote for. So we gotta find some money somewhere.
1 cent.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I'm not saying it's a sacred cow or anything like that. I'm just saying things that are already, like the windows and things that need to be done. There was electrical something, I think, had to be
Maybe
redone.
even the countertops.
Yeah. The doorbell at the back, ringing so that people know somebody's coming in that back door.
Natalie, I'm glad you mentioned the concrete around front. We have got to take a look at that from a safety standpoint as well. Okay, so should we, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Natalie, should we be spending the majority of our energy talking about the interim budget and using the annual numbers to make it make sense? Is that what we should be doing? That's the interim budget, everything that I'm reading in your presentation and the emails and conversation, the interim budget is, I think, what we need to do. Maybe do we need to find out if we all agree on that before we even go forward?
These calculations that we've been presented,
You mean for the interim budget?
yes, for the interim budget. That's what we need to look at as a group. To keep us operational, as I understand it, until July 31st.
Correct. And let's just say June 15th, there's a budget presented, and once you follow the guidelines and depending on at that time what kind of meeting you can have with public hearings and such, if you can approve the budget, even if it's July 1st, then the interim budget goes away. So as soon as you pass the complete, I'm gonna call it the complete fiscal budget for 21, the interim budget goes away. But anything that's already been, if anything had already been spent out there, then that's automatically
Part of it.
part of that budget.
No,
And due to, excuse me, sir, go ahead.
Go ahead, David, before beauty. Go ahead.
What I was gonna say was, so the interim budget, the way it is presented, the way we have it, then we must go ahead and act on it. But July 1st for the balanced budget no longer stands in fact once we do an interim budget. By the state standard.
No.
general statute.
I'm not sure I understand your question,
Okay.
so let me,
We have to present a balanced budget.
no, you can present the balanced budget after July 1st if you have an interim budget already in place. Is that true? I'm not sure if that's exactly what, because as of June 30th at midnight, as Carol Malonzi says, your fiscal year 20 budget turns into a pumpkin. That's always her example. At 12:01, you have to have a budget. It could be this interim budget, or it can be the completed balanced budget that we normally have for the full year.
And not to follow up, if I may, on his comment, Mr. Chairman, but we can't have a fiscal, we have no idea that whether the tax rate is going to change or not. But until we have an established, voted on tax rate, we can't have a budget anyway.
Correct.
And we got an email today, I don't know if you saw that email, Jack, from Chris. Do you have any concerns with that, Kim? I don't know, if you privy to that email?
Was it where he said,
About tax concerns with tax bills and stuff by passing an interim budget and not going ahead and proceeding?
You had to have your tax rate decided by July,
To even
a certain
send,
day.
to even send them to print.
Yeah, so that they can print out the tax bills.
Right.
But we have sent out tax bills late,
Correct.
in August. Remember when we
Oh,
changed, so
No,
software,
it was later than that. It was actually in the September. when they read it.
September. But we had to establish a tax rate.
Right.
But we haven't had that tax rate established by sometime in July. But we can send out the tax bills later because we don't give discounts
Right.
and we don't have municipalities.
Well, I don't think this year, because of the virus, I think we can have, I'm not proposing this at this point, but, we don't know what's going to happen. There could be another outbreak, or, it could get worse or whatever. But we can have a second month interim budget, correct?
If we have fund balance, because your fund balance has to pay it.
Right, yeah, if enough money's come in
Right.
to justify that. So, I mean, we could, and in some of this resource material that you guys, ladies got for us, they talked about the concern, they knew that we would have concerns about getting our bill out. And we may just have to understand that it'll be September again. I mean, just like we're working off of projections and unknown stuff, and
And the more accurate information we get, if we can get in March and then April, we have a better idea of the trends of what's going to happen.
well, for example, we did receive, we're always 3 months behind.
January and February.
So in the month of May, we'll receive, was it March, February or March? And based off of where our averages have been, we have been collecting more this year each month when you compare it with that of a year ago.
because more people are paying,
Well,
or you're talking about sales tax?
I'm just talking about sales
Oh,
tax.
yeah.
So we are bringing in more than what we were a year ago, but this last month, based on what our averages have been, it's already declining. But it was, and we haven't even hit the months where people couldn't go, to restaurants, or they couldn't go shopping. So I think, unfortunately, we won't receive those funds until June, July for those months that we will be hit the hardest.
Like March and April.
Right, so it'll be harder, it's really hard to say, all right, will it be 21% reduction, or is it not gonna be as bad as what we're thinking?
Well, if we're thinking about what the public's thinking, and we should, we've had 10 cases.
No,
11.
no, 12. Billy told me right before he left, there was a new case, so there's 5 active and 7 recovered.
Okay, so, and that word's getting out there, and so our people should have a little bit better outlook on it. And so, I mean, probably less fear for them. And so they may, start moving around a little bit more. And then we've got the easing coming from the governor's office too. So with those two things, I see I see some pickup and not completely healed as far as people getting out and spending money, but they might even try to do more grocery shopping at Dollar General rather than go to the big store.
Right.
So that might be a win for us.
On page 9 of the fiscal year revenue worksheet,
For which year?
fiscal year 21,
Okay.
sorry.
And that was page 9.
Yes, sir. I noticed that the school expense increased and there's nothing for community center appropriation.
I just neglected to put that in because evidently when I did this initially, they had not sent that information. I had to ask them for that. They asked for an increase, yes, of school current expense, which I am not proposing funding at that level. The community center asked for an increase. But if you'll also notice, they asked for a huge increase for school capital. 1.6 million is what they're requesting. And I'm not recommending that either on any sort of budget.
Did they give any?
Yes, that's all in your budget book. I didn't bring
Okay,
them today. We'll bring them to you next week. I had a few other notes that I wanted to add, and I got a few other papers. Like I said, the community center information, all of that came in. The community center did ask for an additional increase.
How do you feel about the community colleges? On page 9 also, third from the top.
That's what we've been giving them.
Is that,
That hadn't changed in a long
That-
time.
That hasn't changed.
is that something that we could slash?
If you would like to, they're one of the ones who sent me the information late. So I've just got a letter and he talks about how many classes that they teach for college students, how much money that saves the students, that sort of thing.
School's not in.
Right.
So
So,
they're still doing the COA courses.
but like I said, these are not my recommendations
Right.
because there are special appropriations. There are some on here that I'm not recommending as well. There are
But
other
if
cuts.
if we have to come up with 2.1 million, we're not gonna come up with that unless we
Right,
cut something.
right.
Oh, yeah, that's true too.
So if I may, I just need to know, do you want an interim budget? And then we can, to make it clearer for the people who are listening and also for Melissa taking notes, do you want to talk about the interim budget and make a decision about that? And then we can talk about ideas on how to come up with 2 million. There's some ideas I have not run any numbers. I've not asked him about any of these numbers or anyone. So I don't know what they would say. They were just ideas from what Kim and I had listened to that I had already not made cuts to on the budget sheet that I was using.
Are you requesting us to, the chairman to poll us? Or you're not requesting, we're not gonna vote?
Now, you can vote tonight on the interim budget if you so choose. Because you don't have to have public input, you don't have to have a public hearing, you don't have to advertise.
Okay, well, suppose we did vote on that, and we get to talking about the budget for the whole year, and we see a change or two in there. Is that gonna affect the interim budget?
No, because interim budget are pretty much everyone's salaries as they are right now, because even if you decided you wanted to give someone pay raise, you cannot in an interim budget.
Okay.
Like I said, it is everything that is right now to keep the lights on and to keep people working.
It's bare bones.
It is
Right.
bare bones.
But can I, if I may, Jack, my concern with that is, what if we're making changes? Are we not hiring any of the positions that are open in the county? There are 2 positions currently open.
Technically, there's more than 2 positions open. There's a part-time GITS driver that has not been hired. Right now, they do not need that person, but remember, GITS is all funded through federal and state grants. Can't remember the exact title right now, emergency management assistant or emergency management technician, I can't remember the exact title of it, that works part-time with Billy. That position is not filled in that capacity. We've hired someone to come in basically and just make the signs because there were so many signs down in the county to help really with that aspect. Then there is a social worker position that is vacant and an SRO position that is vacant.
But those are the kind of things that we need to know before we even start looking at the next year's budget. The interim budget, I'm looking at that. I've got all these papers, I just got them tonight, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So as I listen, and I know we have a projected 2.1 million, you know, some of these proposals of like vacancy could help us with that, you know, things like that. You just said that, and you know, you had options. So those are some of the options we can go for. Before keep what you have, hire no one, a hiring freeze.
Right.
You know, that's one thing we can do. All these, not all, some of the projects that may be ongoing that we can stop and use that money and then later on pick them up, things like that. But the interim budget, I understand what you're saying, says we have an interim budget. Once we have a new budget, this goes away.
Right.
So I think what Jack was asking and Jonathan was, okay, what is we approve this, then we go and look at this, and there's something in here that we didn't think of in here. So you're saying it wouldn't matter because this goes away?
Right. Well, but the interim budget is gonna pay your power bill, it's gonna pay your phone bill.
It's operational.
Those parts aren't gonna change even in next year's budget.
Yeah, operational. I got it.
And
salaries.
salaries. I mean, because in July, according to the interim budget, if you're making $50,000 now a year, you're gonna make the same thing come July 1st.
That's okay.
But what about if it's contracts?
If a contract has already been let and awarded, then you can continue that contract. That is what the state has said.
But what if we need to renegotiate that contract?
Depending on which contract you're talking about, it depends on what the contract says. The contract you have in front of you says 180 days.
Which one is that?
Rescue squad.
EMS,
EMS, excuse
same thing.
me. Slash.
So let's say, and can I, if I may out there, let's say you said about the school expense that you're not gonna recommend that amount. Well, if we agree to give them X amount of dollars to keep the lights on and do whatever for the next month, they're gonna expect that amount. But if we looked and dug into it now and said, we're not gonna give them X, we're gonna lower it down, they could go ahead and plan for their case. You know, we've asked the county departments, I think, to cut 5%. I think we asked them to cut 5% last year. But, you know, I look and like Jack said, this expenditure worksheet, the school expense, the college, the library, community center, those things pop right out that they didn't get cut, but our county employees got cut.
As I said, this is what they asked for, and if you will recall, last year, I recommended school funding remain flat, and the board made a decision to increase their funding. So this is their request. I did not ask them to make a 5% cut, but I've also done some other calculations based on email and an email conversation with Kara Malonzi, that really, we're not even paying this. We technically, according to my calculations, should be should be giving the school more money than what we're actually giving them as well. Which is not the 3.2 that they asked for, but it is more than the 2.85 that we gave them.
Well, I think that the schools hopefully are good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And I remember when the lady from the local government commission was here, Sharon Edmondson, last year, made a statement that their fund balance was better than the county. So that was last year. You know, I got 3 kids in the school system, but we're in rough times and we got to put all, I believe I heard somebody say, you know, we're not thinking outside the box is gone. Box is gone. Now, and if I may, Mr. Chair, what about PCG? Has that been looked at?
We have a meeting is it next week or the following week?
Following week.
Okay. The 3 of us have a meeting, and she gave, I can't remember if she gave me the numbers or if she just told me it would be a very nominal savings. But I couldn't believe that is based on, that's not tax money. That's not that's not sales tax money or property tax. That's a fee that each person pays. And as many comments as I see on Facebook, or I receive phone calls about the hours that they're open or they're always full, I'm not sure it's a good idea that we reduce the number of hours that they're open.
Well, I understand, from the information we have received, that's one area that is booming. People are cleaning and disposing
Don't
of
have
their,
anything else to do.
yes, and so the tonnage has really gone up. That they are transporting from the county, and that's a part of the.
Well, so to address the landfill stuff we're talking about, so Kim, how close does the fees that citizens pay come to covering our cost there?
For the landfill, what we put on the tax bill, I'd have to calculate that.
Are we covering it, Natalie? Do you know?
I think so. I've not looked over the past month with all the extra that's been going into
But it's
this song.
close to self-sustaining.
Right.
So it's always good to renegotiate if you have something to renegotiate.
Well, and like I said, the reason I brought this up because PNC out of the PCG cut their hours. So they're obviously saving money. So I think that would be one of the options on the table.
Based on what Angel said, you could save between $12,000 and $13,000 for salaries. Utilities, she said, the savings would be nominal, and she wasn't sure how to calculate that.
For example, the tax office this year, plus if there are anyone that comes in that have older accounts that, still on the books with customer service. So far this year, they've collected $971,645, and it was budgeted at a little over 1.1 million. So, it's,
Budgeted for what period of time?
this is for this current fiscal year,
Okay.
July through,
And the 900,000 is from July 1.
it's
This is the
through
same.
however far we've posted in May, or whatever's been posted in May.
So it's not broke even yet, but it's.
But she didn't,
But the year's not up.
but
the year's
not,
not
but how
up.
much have we paid out? She didn't answer that question, so.
Well, out of Fund 62, for all of the account lines, so far we've paid $677,932.
Which is our cost for getting rid of it.
Right, but that's not,
But I don't know how many other bills that might still be outstanding that we haven't received.
Getting back to the schools, certainly, since school has been closed, they should have had some savings in gasoline and things like that. Shouldn't they?
Maybe not a great deal because they're still operating.
but they're not running, from what I understand, I don't think they're running as many buses,
I don't think they're running as many buses.
but I'm not sure.
Then, they run, I know, I'm more familiar with Cooper, I know they run one to Core Peak, and they run one, to the all end, the hospital end, by carrying assignments and
But they
food.
were cleaning alone.
But see, that's a reimbursable cost through either FEMA or through some of the CARES money that they're getting. So even if they pay for it out of their regular budget, they can receive that money back through another
That's
source.
what I was gonna say.
But at the same
CARES is gonna
time,
take it.
they're not having to spend it.
Hmm?
They're not having to spend it out of their budget to begin with.
Well, no, you do for FEMA, it's reimbursable.
No, what I'm trying to say is the classroom, the 11 classrooms on this
Oh.
hall,
Mhm.
they're not having to clean them because they're not being used.
Oh, right,
But
I thought
I
you meant
think
for
what
us.
she was saying,
No, yeah.
Oh, okay.
if they're spending $10,000 on this, which is refundable by FEMA, that's $10,000 they still got in their
Right.
bank account.
Right.
That's not being spent. But
Well, they have to spend it to be
Yes.
reimbursed.
They have to spend it,
And there's a long delay.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's cost,
4 to 6 months.
because who was it, with the last hurricane, they didn't get it for 2-3 years.
First aid.
now, the 438,000 of COVID money, is there any way but that's the CARES Act.
Mhm.
Any way to, did you get an answer?
Well, I think that's a totally, if I may, a totally different conversation because that money has a lot of different parameters that don't necessarily influence the yearly budget. And I see Commissioner Riddick agreeing. I know what you're asking about, can we use some of that money? But you can't supplant this money. So even if we use this money, I mean, there's so many different,
But
parameters.
could it be used to pay some of the bills?
no,
No, my rationale is rescue squad,
rescue
Yeah.
squad is
I was-
not a county
but,
function.
but we can't tie it into there because we're paying them.
No,
And we would have to be careful because that, and the county manager is touching close to it, certainly Dr. Rick, it's called co-mingling.
mhm,
Yeah. And it has to be, it's your reimbursement, not a,
It's the direct cost of what you've lost because of COVID.
yeah.
You can't supplant, and there's so many tenors to it
mhm,
that you gotta be careful.
yes.
So sales tax
So-
loss would not be.
No, that is a lost revenue stream. That is nothing related to COVID. The COVID cost is how much, the hard examples they provide are, how much did you have to spend to buy cleaning supplies?
Well, how much do we spend in, like, the sheriff's office with gloves? or
PPE
masks
and
or
things like
whatever?
Screen- Plastic
Plastic
screens.
screens, I mean, it's very,
Because if you do the math, if you think about it, that allotment based off of the calculation percentage, 438,000. If you do 20% of the 2.3, the projected loss in revenue, it almost washes itself out. That's why,
Yeah, but
It doesn't work that way.
So let me ask this question. And maybe we can move forward on this interim budget. If we approve this interim budget, exactly how it is, our goal is for all of these departments to try and not spend as much as this money at the same time. For example, our sheriff, if there's anything that he could put off, particularly I'm thinking like a purchase or
this doesn't include purchase.
no purchases at all.
This is salaries.
All right. Then, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the interim budget presented to us that says Gates County Interim Budget Summary, July 2020. Make a motion that we adopt it.
There's a motion on the floor for the adoption of the interim budget. Is there a second?
I second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
we'll call for discussion, Mr. Chair.
We're gonna do that if we do it after we.
After we voted it. Well, I'm not awake this time, right?
Jonathan was awake. Where'd you go?
Any discussion?
You didn't slide that one, me, sir. To ask Jack, you made the motion, but the county manager stated that there was 3 positions that were available, I believe. So,
Are they included in here?
Yes. Now, you can also implement a hiring freeze.
that's what I suggest.
I mean, you can do a hiring freeze. There are counties who have done flexible hiring freezes. And by flexible, it means if it's a safety sensitive position that the county feels needs to be filled, then you can fill it.
now, the one position you stated, the SRO, that's grant funded,
That is grant funded. Now,
but it's not needed right now because school's not in session.
correct.
So any amount that the county would be,
Well, we don't get that money for next fiscal year until what, typically September, October. I mean, so
so I think the grant was 33. So what's the county's?
depends on how much that person makes. That person who was in that position made 36,000 something.
So we pay the difference in the salary plus the
But then you
benefits.
paid all of it. That person made, 33,625.
Right, now that is a current, if school is in, that position is open. If school was in, it would need to be filled.
Yes.
It's a SRO, it would
Yes.
need to be filled.
And I have recommendations for next year for, as we're talking about all options on the table. But, the SROs during the summer, they do help patrol as well.
Could you tell us what the-
Sheriff Department?
Because they are part of the sheriff's
I
office.
know, I'm just clarifying.
Right. They do road duties. Mhm.
Could you tell us again what the other two positions are?
It was the social worker. And that social worker is the one that investigates all complaints at nursing homes and all the adult protective services.
Well,
And I just want to remind everybody with it being a DSS position, the county on average only pays 30%.
Yeah, I remember.
So if you're looking.
That's what I was gonna ask,
to
what's
reduce-
our,
Yeah,
If you look at this paper,
so a third is usually.
let me get the
rule of
ones that
thumb
have the
is
correct number colors.
I remember that as soon as you started.
Right. It is color coded.
That's good.
yeah, it's very cool.
So in an attempt so that you can understand on the very back page, certain positions, like the yellow ones, are grant funded.
Okay, that's good.
The blue one, that's the water, that's that is the Fund 61, so that's all from the water. If you'll notice, 75% of the customer service salaries are reimbursed through Fund 61, which is the water. For administration and finance, 2.5% of the salary, and I say salaries, but actually when you look at the whole budget, it's that entire department budget. But for this, it's salaries. 2.5% is from Fund 62, which is solid waste, and 18% is from water. The governing body, 20% of your salary is reimbursed from the water, and 1% is from solid waste. Tax has 10% of their salaries from solid waste. The one that's the beige, that's the SRO position that was part of the salary was covered by the grant. And then DSS salaries, about 50% are reimbursed by state funds.
now, customer service only deals with water?
Yes,
So why
well,
wouldn't they-
75%, because they collect all the money from any other department as well. They take up all the money from planning and inspection. Register of Deeds has to bring their money over to them, extension, elections. Who else collects money now left out? On occasion, DSS might have something that comes in. Or anytime, if you sell something on Gov Deals, the money has to run through them.
So did we determine the 75%?
That was determined by,
Legislation.
no,
The
Maximus, several, the year I came or the year before I came. So since we have moved tax, I just took what customer service used to get reimbursed and moved it to tax. So we can ask Maximus to re-look at the numbers and help us calculate if we need to new percentages.
Because that would help if it's come out of Fund 11. Because every little bit will help.
But that would not take effect until next year because of the, well, or maybe 2 years because of the way Maximus, there's 2 years behind. I
This
think,
last report, I think it was for fiscal year 18, and
Okay.
it just turned in February. It's a couple of years
it's
behind.
a couple of years behind because of the way they run their numbers, and don't ask me to explain it because,
They're the ones that
I can't.
determine they determine indirect costs,
Mhm.
and that's when DSS files their monthly report, they
Mhm.
use that indirect cost from this. It's something that is required and turned into the state as well.
So I know we have a motion in a second, but we're still in discussion, Mr. Chair. My concern is the hiring freeze. And I do want to ask, because somebody asked me this question and I did not know the answer, which happens more often than not. These are projections, this 21%. You could come in right now and say, we're going to use sales tax of what we want, and we could have a balanced budget tomorrow.
right,
From what I've gathered from the webinars I've been on, I think the theme is to be as conservative as you can going into it with hopes that, that's the worst case scenario, but we're gonna see a better, better
But
It's
picture.
easier to
A better reality.
Right.
fund money after you get it and add two things than have to go come in the year and start subtracting again.
So we are still in discussion. And I think I have my head wrapped around this EMS. We're certainly going to be having a conversation with them. What do their numbers look like and what can we do? So I think that's, I think heard Commissioner Jones use the word negotiate. I think I might have used it a while ago too, or renegotiate. That's certainly an area that we'll be talking about. So we really don't have to be concerned about this 49,894 number in there, because once we establish the balanced budget, this goes away.
That's for emergency management, that's Billy's.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
You're talking about the
I'm
one
sorry.
that's up above, that's 6 or below.
67, yeah, I'm sorry, I got on the wrong line.
Right,
So-
because that is, excuse me, because that's based on the 813,000, but if you renegotiate for
A lesser amount.
a lesser amount, then as soon as that budget becomes effective, if they've not already received this appropriation, but if they've already received it, then you can go ahead and fix it immediately.
Right.
Otherwise, the next month, they'll know, okay, if I'm supposed to get, making up a number, 50,000, well, I'll get 17,667 dollars less the following month to make up for what I received in July.
I don't think I have any more questions.
Any other discussion? And also county manager brought our attention to flexible. I hadn't heard any discussion as pertaining to that, about the flexible.
Flex freeze.
I'm accustomed to hiring freeze, but some language here about essential personnel. We go forward with those searches or hire those people, but they have to document why that is essential. So it's not a hire freeze, nobody gets hired, because we know that sometimes there are essential positions that must be filled. You just don't leave them vacant. But others, you can just freeze them until the budget is better or whatever, but it's called essential personnel.
And hopefully nothing happens horrible to someone, but someone
That's
can
right.
be incapacitated for a while and you have to replace that person.
But the motion in the second didn't include that.
Would you,
I amend the
Motion.
Well, no, Jack made the motion.
Jack made a motion. Okay.
and how would you like me to amend that motion?
A hiring freeze, we would implement a hiring freeze, but essential personnel, vacancies, positions would be, on the language,
Excluded.
would it be,
Well, we're only talking about 3 positions
well, that's true.
and a couple of weeks, so that,
A flexible hiring freeze for essential personnel.
Personnel, something like that. Flexible hiring freeze, except for essential personnel.
So
Chairman,
you have to change your motion.
I'd like to amend my motion.
Yes, sir.
I will agree to the amendment.
Do we need to vote on that, actually, don't we?
Yeah, you need to vote on the amendment first.
Okay. I will amend my motion to include a flex hiring freeze to be included in my motion. That's my amendment in the form of a motion.
I will second that.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
You didn't think it was gonna be that easy.
I did.
Of those 3 positions, county manager, would any of those fall into that?
Essential, you know.
I
Right,
would
what you work.
consider 2 of them to be essential, both of the full-time.
So
But you can vote, and then they can justify to me, which I was gonna hold off because I felt like this went more with the other budget. But this is something that another county is doing, okay? I received their final copy today. is the furlough. I received this final copy today, was waiting on it. So I got it right before I came over here.
What are the high spots?
They implemented effective immediately an emergency leave, hiring freeze, furlough, and a reduction in force. And their hiring freeze is section D. And then it says exceptions to the hiring freeze will be considered for positions that are critical to citizen and employee health and safety, compliance with federal, state, local laws, and delivery of essential services. And department heads may request an exception to the hiring freeze by submitting a hiring freeze exception request form, and the county manager can grant it or deny it.
You know, Jack, since you made the motion, sir, I'll ask you. County manager said that she thinks that 2 of those 3 positions would be essential, which means that there's no need to implement a hiring freeze, really.
Well, there's the unknown.
Well, and that's the thing. If I was a department head and hear what we just said, I'm gonna try to hire somebody. But I remember last year, Commissioner Jordan made the statement sitting at the cooperative extension table. Sometimes you gotta wear more than one hat and do more than one thing. I just remember him sitting beside me down at the table saying, making that statement. And I know we're in discussion, but we're in May now.
If I may, Chair.
Yes, right.
I'm accustomed to that too. You know, sometimes, at times, the critical times, when you're facing a budget shortfall such as we are now, and we're looking at an interim budget going forward or a budget in next year, that's the time you look at functions and who does what. And when you have a hiring freeze, that's what you do. You freeze it and you see what kind of responsibilities and duties you can shift until such time that the budget is afforded the opportunity to hire someone in that position that you just froze or eliminated, furlough, whatever you want to call it. And it's right, people have to do more than one thing in these times. These are not usual times, but we have gotten accustomed to being usual people. This is what I do, and that's all I do. Well, we're going to try to hold on to everyone we can, and to do that, sometimes you cannot have 2 of each.
Let me respond to that if I may. That makes sense. I remember a little history, but not to delve into it, but if we were to do something like that, now we would certainly have to have a document that dictated what that person's role or their job description would be.
And you think about it, sort of piggyback, the county's a business. There's a lot of businesses that are restructuring right now, realizing that they don't need everything that they had. And because they're losing money or they lost money, we're talking $2.1 billion of taxpayer money. And we're running the business for the taxpayers. Like you said, I think all options got to be on the table over the next month.
Looking at it, I don't have it. The SR position, he has not said anything about wanting to hire immediately. He was going to look for somebody. I think it's kind of the way he left it. The other position, the social worker position, it has been vacant for over a month now. And she had initially wanted to advertise immediately, and then she had said she was going to wait to see what happened today. But of course, keep in mind, I would consider that one at this point in time more essential than the SRO because of the duties that vacant position is doing. It's right.
And that's the issue, that position has been open. This isn't the first time that position's been open in the last couple of years.
Well, in the times we are, and
But it's very critical time.
With the nursing homes being hotspots.
Because if you look at the data from North Carolina, about 80% of the deaths are from the nursing homes.
So if there's any essential position, that's the one. To me,
And plus, we only pay about a third.
documents have been not funding the whole position.
And Natalie, and I know Althea wasn't here last year, and I think I remember just looking over this sheet that you gave us, talking about grant money for the SRO. Last year, in the last year, when we approved another SRO grant, the sheriff made a statement that his plan was to move a part-time into the full-time and not fill the part-time.
That did not happen.
But that was what he said at our meeting.
Well, let me rephrase.
On record, right?
Let me rephrase that. It happened, but then for a variety of personnel reasons, that person,
But that was
Went
gonna
back
be
to
an extra
part-time.
position that was gonna be $14,000, $15,000, $16,000 extra money from the sheriff's office, which didn't happen because of the way it ended up happening, right? Okay. I just noticed that looking at this sheet.
right, right,
Okay, so you're showing us.
right. I just want to show
Recommendation.
you what they said, and then we can talk about everything else that's on here later, because I don't think it necessarily applies to the interim budget. I just wanted to show you how they had changed their language to implement now, because I think I saw a draft, and I think 95% of this is new to their personnel policy.
Well, another thing to keep in mind too, while the clerk's in here, is that, I know that we've talked about things matching our ordinances. So if we adopt something like we're getting ready to vote on, we need to make sure that this matches our personnel ordinance and all
Right.
that stuff, they match.
So if you decide you want to do something like this, then that can be implemented, or the wording can be changed, implemented to whatever decision you make next week about personnel ordinance or personnel policy.
And fellow commissioners, just for the purpose of the listening public, this is an emergency leave document, says emergency leave, hiring freeze, furlough, and reduction in force. That's what we're discussing.
And this is a unique time, so, it's very reasonable.
And like I said, this is from another county, but I wanted to share what they were doing, because as you can see, it applies to it applies to everyone in their county.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'll call for the vote.
All right. There's a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. May I hear all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Hearing none. Motion carries. All in favor. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if I may, if you want to move to okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Just so you know, these are things that, as I've been looking at the budget, I've already made cuts to on a document that I have, and believe me, I have about 10 different documents that I've been working on, trying to play with, and I hate to use the word play, but I plug a number in and that doesn't make a big difference, so I go back and think about something else I can change. So every year, it's a small savings, but we send Tar Heel delegates. And if we're gonna reduce everyone's travel, then I feel like that travel should be eliminated.
And that was what?
The Tar Heel delegates for the senior Tar Heel.
And they canceled the senior games this year.
Okay. Then
I think that's.
there's travel that some people have to attend because they have to have certification hours. So I have gone through departments and talked to them either through email or when they came in for their budget meeting, or since then on the phone, about how many hours do you need to maintain a certification? How many hours do you have to get your certification? So for example, the tax office, Chris has to attend training starting immediately because he only has 2 years to become certified, and that's the state law. So he does have travel in there. Melissa has to have certification hours. Christy needs a few. Lauren needs some. They all have certifications that require training hours. Kim is going to begin working on her certification. The building inspectors have to keep certain hours for their certifications. Though, and Register of Deeds, they also have certification hours that are required. So a lot of the departments, their travel has been cut to the bare bones for travel. IT, we have looked, this is some of that COVID money. Well, it's not coming down as CARES Act money. It's additional funds that is coming through EMPG, which is some of the emergency money, emergency management money, to help this virtual office, to help with some of this equipment that we bought and that can update some of the computers that have been used. So some of that money can be taken out of the IT line for next year. We've also cut it down to what computer absolutely needs to be replaced, or else that person is not going to be able to function with what they have next year. So we've cut that down. We did leave a little bit of miscellaneous money in there because someone's computer might really just die. And then you'll be stuck without a computer. I would strongly recommend that the Board of Commissioners meet with the Board of Elections. The reason I'm saying that is based on an article in the News Observer and just a very quick comment that was made today during the county manager's phone call by the attorney. No one knows what elections in November is going to look like. And as you know, counties are responsible for paying for elections. They are anticipating a lot more mail-in ballots. According to the News Observer, and I have not talked to Clatia, but according to the News Observer, they tried to poll all 100 elections directors. And they admitted they didn't get a hold of everyone. But they were asking them, what kind of expense did you foresee? And some of them, even from the larger counties, basically said, we have no idea. We have turned in budgets and we did not take any of this into account because we were hoping everything was going to be, on the upswing. One person said, and I forget, it was a central county, Piedmont County, they said that they anticipated not having as many people visit the one stops. Therefore, they were not going to need quite as many people working in the one stop. So they were going to take those funds that were going to pay the people and put it towards mailing of the ballots. Because when you mail ballots, they said the cost of a ballot, an absentee ballot, ranged anywhere in there from like I think $1.50 to almost $3, depending on how many people you had running, the way the ballots have to be designed, and all of this. So what Clatia put in her budget was one-stop site.
Now, for the primary, they had 3.
Correct.
And they were not utilized based off of the numbers that I saw.
Yeah,
Well,
one had only 50.
And I say not, they were utilized, but
Not
we,
with me.
and I asked this question last year, and I want to ask it again. If the Board of Elections comes in and says, we want to have 5 early voting sites because we think that's a necessity, we can't tell them no.
Correct.
They can spend the taxpayer money like they want to with no.
We have to appropriate it.
Right. And because Clatia and I talked, and I knew that line, she had put 1 site for the primary. And of course, we ended up with 3 sites. And she told me, she said, if there is one person who does not agree amongst the 5 board members, it automatically goes to the state. And the state makes the decision. And if the state says you will have 3, you will have 3, and the county has to pay for it. But she has put 1 in for the fall. She said that's what she was trying to encourage them to do. So that's why I think it would be a good step for the Board of Commissioners to meet with them to help reiterate how much it costs. Like you said, if there were 50 people at one site, that site was
Over a couple
open
weeks.
for 14, was it?
The one at Blanchard
Yes.
Road was very underutilized. And you have to have 3 people.
3 people, and
and
they were
they
there
The entire day.
The
Right.
entire day, and they get $15 an hour. What was it?
No,
They got paid a good amount.
Yeah, it was-
For 50 people, there's
So
a
if it's
Right.
60 day
$16 an
span.
hour, it's $48 every hour.
it's
And that was
not,
money that we had to
Maybe it
go
was
back.
not, maybe it wasn't that high.
But we had
it's
to go
not
back
that
and
high.
remove funds to pay for those.
But I would say, I have a friend who's on the State Board of Elections, And she just fell out, which we told her that we had 3. She said, and she lives in one of the Piedmont counties, and they have one, early voting, you can go to one site. She said, I can't imagine you in Gates County with 11,000 people have 3.
And that falls back to
They get $10,
$10.
Oh, $10.
$10 an hour, they get 15 for training.
Okay.
But yes, for $10 to sit there for 10 hours and you see 2 people a day. And I'll be honest, Claudia got that. She understood that, but it was a board decision and therefore that's what had to be done. So that's why I would encourage you to reach out and meet with them to discuss that. They have also requested an increase from $25 a meeting to $50 a meeting. I told Claudia that with this budget shortfall, I was not gonna make that recommendation. They also wanted to be paid $150 on the day of election. So I told her I was not making that recommendation either because of the budget shortfall.
Do you have something in all of that in print?
Some of that's gonna be in your budget book, but some of it was just verbal between Claudia and I.
And the request will be in there too, man.
Yes, your budget book's just like every year. It tells you how much each department wants.
I mean, the specific request about the Board of Elections.
Yes, everything, because it
$150.
was in there last year as well and it was not funded.
And their board members, it's public info.
Mhm.
I don't know who I think it's 5 board members
It's
now, instead of 4, since they changed, but I'm not sure who they are, but I think that would be good info to at least have on our county website if it's not
It
already.
is, it's been updated and
It's Mrs. Sears.
Mr. Sears, Jimmy, your, Dee Hill,
Boo Hill.
I want to say,
Morgan?
no, wait a minute, let me pull it up. The other lady, there's 2 other ladies and I don't remember their names, so. Emily Cross and Karen Sims.
And who is
And it is on the website?
Leslie Hill.
Is that, what is the guy's name?
She's a Republican.
It's, somebody's wife.
But they're the ones that decided to have the 3
Yes.
of the,
And those names are on the website?
They're all on the website.
I think it probably would be a good idea, because for them to understand that this is a new day and we're in a different situation, and.
We have never met with that board, have we?
No,
Yes, we have.
One
no,
time.
not with this
Wait.
board.
Not with this
Not with
board,
these
and a
people,
whole
but-
board we
We
did.
did, yeah.
And I'm not sure, because we've gone to the conversation that we said we'd postpone. I'm not sure what they have in mind about voting, because some of those things, such as the plastic guards, if we bought those, then that would be used for that money that you were asking about earlier. But I don't know if that board has even thought about that.
Well, that's something that we need to
Right.
discuss, because you can't get that in last minute. You got to plan ahead to have it designed.
Right.
I will say that I did get a postcard telling me where my voting poll was.
We also, office supplies, what we've started doing, we've already cut off spending, like I said, for this year, unless it's something major. And of course, the way our finance system is anyway this year or now, every purchase requires a requisition. So they have to put everything in and it can be approved or denied anyway. So what we've talked about is ordering myself doing ordering, or someone in our office doing the ordering for everybody, because sometimes some departments don't look at the price. They just put it in the cart and go. So we're gonna start ordering, and if you need a box of ink pens and you need a box of ink pens and you need a box of ink pens for your department, it's cheaper to order 3 boxes versus 1. So we're gonna start doing that to help with some of the cost savings.
And paper, there's a lot of variety in the price of.
Well, that's one of the things that people put in the cart and they don't look at the price. We typically get coupons that paper is anywhere from $28 to $35 instead of the $65 that was someone asked to purchase the other week. So I said, no. I shopped around. After I did some shopping, then I got a coupon for some more paper. So everyone should be good on paper for the next little bit. Some of the other things that we talked about, just briefly, Kim and I have, but that they highlighted was not giving salary increases or merit for this coming year. To some places, as a last resort, will do a reduction in force, which is a layoff. Some places are looking at furloughing people, and I'll be honest, the budget that I have that gets us down about a little over $2.1 million does include furlough, and it does not include any salary increases or any merit.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
We certainly have some people, you noted them a while ago, who have to go for certifications.
Mhm.
When they get their certification, in the past, we've gone back and looked at their pay. If they get their certification, are we going to wait?
Only one person has to get a certification, and that's Chris this year. I mean, he has 2 years. Kim can't finish hers in 1 year, and everyone else is just to maintain it.
Okay.
There should not, as far as I know, no one came to me and said that they would be getting a certification this year.
What do you have to go, Camp Greenville, somewhere like that?
Well, I think most of the classes are at, in Chapel Hill School of Government.
Okay.
It's a good thing my brother lives there.
Right. Yeah, right there. She's saving some money by doing that.
That's good.
Other things that they talked about or recommended, and I know this sounds like a small one, but I have seen county cars doing this, and it's no car idling to help reduce the cost of gas. We do make sure that we are turning back heat and air on the buildings on the weekends. I know that that'd be a very small savings, but as many buildings as we have, that can add up as well. Some other positions or ideas that can be thrown out, and I'm not saying these are happy ideas, but these are things to consider. You could reduce the community center budget, therefore forcing the school system to reduce their operating hours. Do not fill the SRO position with the BLET position, certified person. That would then you could hire them at a lower rate as an uncertified deputy. Or you could replace the SRO position with a current deputy and do not fill that vacated position. The downside to that is there's one less deputy on the road. Also, in next year's budget, if you remember, and when we approved the budget for this year, there was the one position for the sheriff's office that was vacant that we did not fund. Someone had left and we did not fund it. Today, they used the term defund. They defunded that position because people were talking about doing that, but they didn't get rid of the position. And that's what we had told the sheriff, we're not going to get rid of it next year. You can get that position back. I did not fund that position in the budget I'm working on. There's also the option to, if you needed to reduction in force, there's one position that I could think of that those duties could be given to someone else. They also have thrown out at the meeting retirement packages. But we've looked, there's not that many people we have that are either retirement age or close to their 20 years that they might be interested in retiring. But if you would like for me to look at that option, I can do that as well. There's also the option of some places have suggested operating 4 days a week to reduce the, or 4.5 to reduce energy consumption in all of your buildings.
Now, you said the reduction in force.
Mhm.
How do you do that in a way that it's correct? Is it time served? Is it,
No, now time served, that could be an early retirement. And those would be different. They would be different. You can offer retirement, let's say you know someone has 19 and a half years. And you knew they were just wanting to make it to 20. And you know that their position is one that could be absorbed elsewhere. Then you can offer early retirement and you offer a package deal. Today they talked about how if you know someone's gonna retire, but you're gonna hire someone back into that same position at a lower rate, is it really worth what you paid out to that person to retire early and bring in a new person? So they said, those are things you'd have to
And we
consider.
also have that, we have a unfunded liability with retirement right now.
Right. But the county policy that I've provided you, it talks about the definitions. It talks about the furlough, where everyone would get 1 day of unpaid leave a month. So in essence, everyone's salary is reduced. We would still pay their benefits, those sort of things. That would be a small cost savings
So
as well.
what is that called?
A furlough.
That's called furlough. I was, just so the camera knows, I'm not playing on my phone. I looked up the definition of furlough.
Could I ask a question, and maybe Ray can answer this? Have you, I know we don't have a jail, so we have a form of people. Have there been any of the old counties, have any of them, jails have been a breeding place for the virus as well. Have any of them stop saying we're not going to take their prisoners or people?
That has happened a few times, but it's also due to not only just COVID-19, but also because of the number of inmates. But we have COVID-19 in all the jails that we touch.
And Kim, probably to sort of piggyback off your question, if we have somebody locked up and they get COVID, we have to pay the medical bills.
Mhm.
If
We
we
can't
had,
file insurance if they got insurance.
if we had any extra medical, I don't remember seeing it in our booklet or anything. Just what Glenn said a while ago, we haven't seen an influx of doctor bills the taxpayers have to pay, have we?
And that's a
Not
real
from
hard
COVID.
one to pinpoint. That's usually one we do go in the red, even
Because
budgeting.
250, is it 250?
Well, that's 250,000 is for the inmates that we pay to the
The
jail,
jails.
For housing.
right, for housing.
But if they,
That'll
if
be
we,
causes on
if
us
we
if
take,
they don't have insurance.
if our sheriff's department takes someone to wherever,
Elizabeth City, let's say.
Elizabeth City, and they go there and get in a fight with another inmate and get their jaw broken, we have to pay for that.
But it's still cheaper than having our own jail.
True.
What have we seen, and Manny Ray, you on the Trillium Board, have you seen increases in, mental health referrals?
Well, there's been an increase in our county. I can't say for the other 28 counties, however, for ours, there's certainly been a tremendous increase for mobile crisis as well as IVCs, involuntary commitment.
And that's what the sheriff told me.
Does that have an impact on our budget, the increased numbers?
Well, it has a drain on manpower because we are demanded to stay with
The
that
person,
particular person until they're evaluated, until they're committed.
well, and see, there are a lot of costs related to things that, not costs, but, they say there's rising, people abusing, their spices and abuse of children as people get desperate in these crises. There's a lot besides just dollars and cents.
Right.
Now, the one thing you didn't mention, and the one thing that hasn't changed over the years is the Gatesville tax collection fee. There's 120 parcels, if I remember correctly, from last year, an email from Kathy Lane in Gatesville. Over the years, I would be curious as to how long they've been paying $1,000, and if that's an agreement I know we're talking a little bit of money, but every little bit helps, and we've had to get new equipment, I'm sure, over the years. I think I read 120 in my book from last year.
That actually
I think
is,
it's 200.
that is actually in line with what other counties charge. That's what I was looking for. I looked at that last year, and that is actually, in some cases, more than some counties charge larger towns.
Where would that be in there?
There's just a line, I don't know, it's probably on the second page.
Of your revenue.
It's $1,000.
Revenue.
It's close to the bottom.
And I just saw that, like, you know, Linda said, I think cost may have gone up. I didn't know if that was a formula that was done. And the other thing that I thought of when I'm thinking $2.1 million, which is a lot of money, any assets we could get rid of, try to sell, market.
The only large one is the medical center, but going back, if I can just answer your other. They range anyone, a lot of places did percentage. So they did 1% to 5%, and when I did calculations on various things, $1,000 is in some cases more than what other counties charge.
But it would cost them a lot more to buy the equipment and get somebody.
They have no staff.
Yeah, but back to the old dental clinic. I don't really think we ever got an answer for the requirements, that they needed, but that's the only asset that we have that we can try to sell. And 80,654.11 is 1 cent. For every 80,654.11 we get for something, that's another cent tax decrease that we have to look at. And we've got other buildings in the county sitting here that are county owned that aren't getting utilized.
Our clerk has just advised us that we're gonna be muted for a moment, so just stay with us. She's sort all right, we're back from recess and back in order. So,
Okay, you were talking about
Commissioner
gyms.
Hopper, you remember where you
You were
were?
talking about gyms.
Gyms. You know, we've had two major food drives. The first one, 250 families all were to receive a nice array of food products. Last Saturday, it was like 215, I think. I might be off a number because, you know, one more person was driving in as I was driving out. But they have received, and I'm not sure exactly what the grant was for, a freezer, a larger freezer, which they used for their meats and all. And they had just received word that they were going to receive a grant for that, so that they would need more space.
What dollar amount was in the grant?
No, I don't want to give one. I think I know the answer, but I don't want to say it and be.
Was it freezer like we would have at our home?
I think it was one big, more like a very large commercial like deal. But I don't put,
Right, they do a good job, they deserve it.
and it's been a lifesaver for a lot of people during this time.
Oh, absolutely. And they work hard.
They do. Wonderful service.
So when I mentioned furloughs, this is a proposal, like I said, from another county. That is something that I would like for you to at least think about. It is not an option that I really would like to make. However, there are all options on the table. And if the furlough policy is developed, then the commissioners would have to approve it.
In this document, the furlough document,
Yes.
does it talk about, we'll look at it later, but does it talk about we'll continue to provide benefits or?
It discusses all of that.
Okay, all right, good. Thanks.
So you said, would you rather have a reduction in force or furlough? Reduction in force would only affect maybe a handful of people, but furlough would affect the county as a whole, wouldn't it?
Right, the reduction in force, which is the document that I've been looking at, it would affect the ones that it would not affect would be 911 and the sheriff's office, with the exception of two positions, because they are not based upon their job descriptions and they were not road deputies. They were office people.
So we've got, I think, last month of budget with the health insurance. How many county employees did we determine, Jack? Remember, was it?
I think it was 75.
75 to 80-ish.
Somewhere.
We don't have that many departments that aren't paid out of enterprise fund that would affect the budget, I wouldn't think. If there was a reduction in force that could be reduced, is that,
No, this would affect every department, so even if you reduce, I'm gonna use customer service, if they were all, if they were included, then of course that reduces the amount of money that comes back from the general fund, from Fund 61.
because they're funded at
75%,
25% is what the other portion would be.
correct, from the general fund.
Because, I noticed seeing on the news, bigger cities are reducing sanitation and other people. We don't have it 80 to 85 and only a few departments that can really be reduced in force. But, like I think Commissioner Riddick said, or, all options got to be on the table right now, unfortunately.
And if you have ideas for reduction in force, then please let me know, because as they were talking today, you don't need to make them appear random, and you don't want them to hurt the departments that need the people who are working, such as the sheriff's office or dispatch, for
You
example.
would basically have to do some type of policy or procedure of and you might not want to go with the last in person might be the best person in the department. I don't know how you would, in a non-discriminatory way, choose if you had to pick 3 people or.
I think it would go back to the word that Althea used, is what's essential.
Well, you also go by what's in either the personnel ordinance or the personnel policy, because they will have something in there about reduction in force.
Okay.
You can also look at furloughs.
Right.
That's more equitable, a furlough, depending on how many days a month or week or whatever, furloughs across the board. And you can also look at working 4.5 days a week or 4 days a week. That would save you, operational expenses as far as utilities and all. And if you look at it, when I looked at it, had a personnel study, most people don't work 40 hours a week anyway.
Most of ours were 37.5.
Everyone except for me works, and the deputies, but.
As a matter of fact,
I didn't
Oh, I know what you mean. I know what you mean, but actually, I know what you mean, though. Right.
actually, if you looked at the reduction in hours first,
No, well,
That could-
can I clarify what you mean by reduction in hours? The furlough, which is reducing people's hours, or the number of days a week, hours as in number of
the
hours?
number of hours in a day,
Like the county's open, the
Okay.
county offices would be open less.
right? Maybe 1 hour less. The positive to that is that employee kept their job, kept their benefits, and they got home an hour earlier.
But it'll reduce their pay, because that was part of the discussion that,
That's be
They
the
had
only reason
today.
we would do that.
right, and that was the discussion we had today. Actually, the example that they provided, was it Greensboro?
I can't remember, but I know.
They said in 2009, when the recession hit, the mayor said, I need 100 volunteers for furlough, or else we're gonna have to do a reduction in force. And 160 people volunteered. Because the majority of the staff realized, I might receive a little bit less money, but I still have a job and I still have benefits and that sort of thing.
That's what I said about furlough.
Right.
And you look at the places, there's hospitals furloughing right now. You never would have thought.
Right.
Yeah, because
Nurses are, my mother-in-law, off a week a month because of it. Who would ever thought after 20-some years?
elective surgeries have gone by the way. So of
Right.
course, they are nice starting those back. So.
And as I said, the budget have been working with, did have the furlough, and that's what got us down to the 2.1 million.
Say that again, please.
You've already played with
I've
that.
already played with that.
That's okay.
That gets us down to the 2.1 million.
You have to remember that for the most part, and you have the salaries in front of you, people just don't make a lot, so it doesn't
Yeah.
save, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah,
Like some of the bigger places. that
right, I
have-
understand. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, because, yeah, a percentage of something that's not real big is not real big
And
percentage.
as we get the new numbers in, maybe they won't be as bad as we think they're going to be.
Right. And you can tell me, no, don't use 20%, use 10%, use 15%. And then, of course, that changes the scenario as well. But I know that you had asked about the loan, so I'll let Kim explain the documents. And you're just getting this now because she just received clarification about 4 o'clock.
Off the press.
Kim, what is the percentage of our budget that's paid for personnel? Do you know that?
Not off the top of my
Salary
head,
benefits.
not off the top of my head, but
Probably no less than
Well, if we were to
80%.
look at it,
yeah, it's a, I mean, hold on.
65, 70%.
No, much,
Higher than
much.
that.
I've got a document somewhere that might. be able to tell me.
$72,000, that's what, 40, I want to say it's 58,000 a month. Well, we're talking about all the benefits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have it with all the benefits.
Because insurance is like $7,000 for a lot, isn't it, per employee?
It's
Yeah.
more than that.
I didn't know how much of the total budget was,
Yeah.
salary
And
and
benefits.
benefits, yeah.
Right, but if you see the salary, what's on that, this
Sheet.
color coded sheet, I mean, that grand total was $3,699,000
Out of what's
out
our
of the 12,000
So
for
we're
Fund
on,
11.
and this-
And that's just the salary, that's not any of the benefits.
Okay. Right now we have 3 different loans. As you know, the biggest one is for the Central Middle School project that we can't look into at this time.
And not for 10 years, we can't make any changes.
Correct.
Thank you.
So the 2 that we could look at refinancing, one, I think it says high school. I'm assuming it's for the gym, maybe?
Yes.
And then the other one was for DSS. The high school loan, this is the one that's going to be, the term will end March of 2022, and this is the easiest one to explain. For this loan, the principal is a fixed amount. So when I requested refinancing what the interest rate would be, we currently pay, it's 3.98%. And he gave me 2.1%. So as you can see, just by refinancing there, I mean, it does lower your cost. And I broke it down into fiscal years because the total will be a little over 7,000, and that takes into account that we would pay 3,000 in legal fees to, do the paperwork. But really for fiscal year 21, you're only saving $4,500, and the next year will be $2,600.
And
So-
it's retiring in 22.
Correct. So you will save over 7,000 in the long run. I just wanted you to know that it was not immediate or it wasn't in one fiscal year. Does anybody have any questions about this one before going to the next one?
The payment,
In your attachments, the first page, this is what the current schedule is for payments, and it's front and back. There's a little bit left on the back. The second page that I had written on, this was what BB&T had sent me as a mock schedule if we refinance moving into the next payment, which would be in September of this year.
And will you explain why we're staying with BB&T?
Okay, the reason I did not, and I was gonna talk about that on the next one, the reason why I did not, look around for other banks or, basically, if I only am lowering the rate, the interest, if I'm just looking at a lower interest rate, but I don't change the terms, I don't change the bank, then I don't have to go through the LGC for approval. I just have to notify them of the change in the interest rate. So if I start looking around, I've got to go through that process first.
so if we're just changing the rate, we don't have to go through the LGC. But if we're changing the terms,
Correct.
we have to go.
Even if you stay with the same bank.
And you're staying with the same institution.
If I'm going to a different bank, I think you still have to go through the approval process. So right now, I'm not changing anything other than we've lowered the interest rate. Everything else stays the same.
So we have 4 payments left of 216.
Yes. And on this, on the top sheet, I only put the interest because this is a fixed principal, so, we're gonna pay the same amount regardless of what I do here. And that is $216,666.67 per payment. So that's, we have a total, I think it's over 800,000 that's left to pay. $866,666 left in principal to pay on that loan.
Okay.
So like I said, that was pretty straightforward. Whatever you can get as a lower interest rate, it will lower your interest payments. It's not gonna lower your principal.
That's not enough, really.
The second one for DSS, I actually called Jonathan this morning to pick his brain, because this one is not a fixed principal. This is a fixed total payment. So I ran a few options. If you're looking at your packet, the second page, that is our current schedule. That's what's left to pay. And that fixed total payment is $142,054 and some change. So what I had him to run, he initially said, I can give you an interest rate of 2.55. We are currently paying 289. So it's not a huge difference in what we're already paying. When he first ran it for me, he lowered the total payment. And when I started comparing from year to year, the interest, I realized, and I sent him the question back, why is it that my interest rate is lower, but when I'm comparing the last 2 years, the interest we are paying is higher for the lower interest rate? Because when he reduced the total payment, we're not paying the principal back as fast. So that means that the interest didn't really help us. I had him to rerun it, leaving the total payment the same as what we're doing now with the lower interest rate. So you will say that's where on my first page, that's the one that's highlighted in blue, or with the blue, the 2.5% same payment. That is the only option that we actually saved any money. And then we ran it for 8 years and for 10 years with the thought that perhaps we could lower the payment to help with what we're facing right now. But still keep in mind that we'll pay it at the same time. I mean, we'll keep it within the 5 years and pay it off. I did double check to see if there was a payment penalty, and there is to pay early. It's 1%. So I included on back to the front page, each column has the total interest you would pay based on the 5 years for each scenario, if there are legal fees to refinance, and for the last two, I just calculated if we did pay on the same schedule at that 5 year, what would be the remaining portion of the principal we'd be paying early and what that penalty would be. So as you can see, even if you spread it out 8 to 10 years to try to help with the now, you're really costing yourself a lot more.
And real quick, these numbers do not match what's on that sheet that I gave you for fiscal year 21, because she gave some initial numbers and then she came back and at the end of last week and said, wait a minute, these don't look right. I'm going to get back with him. And he finally, like I said, got back with him at 4 o'clock, or her at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Jesus, these numbers don't make any sense. Where'd you get this stuff from? Jack, let me, because I know you still do a little bit of finance stuff.
A little bit.
Talked to Kim today, and I asked her about the extension of 7, 8, 10 years what they would run on the purpose of right now, people are living in the now, there's no cash flow. We don't know what our cash flow is gonna be with sales tax. So my thought process was, at that point at least, get the lowest possible payment that we can have this year, if it's not costing us much money, but also keeping in mind, and just looking at this, and I hadn't seen these numbers. We could extend our loan and only pay $83,000 this year compared to 142.
Right, right.
So that's a savings of almost $60,000. Now, if we end up getting more money closer to the end of the year, we could pay extra on it.
Right.
But we don't have to. We could still pay $142,000 if we get extra revenue in. But we're only obligated $83,064.65. Am I reading that right, Kim?
Yes.
You see, and does that make sense? Looking at the now, because we're in the now. What is the difference in extending it out, like you said, over the long run? Sometimes it makes more sense to pay a little extra when you don't have as much to pay now.
And I did ask him about, depending on when you would sign the papers for the refinancing, does it change any of your dates? And he said it doesn't.
And that was the thing I asked, I asked him about how their payment schedule works, guys. At some point, could you sign and not renew till next year or next fiscal year?
So how about, it's a good thought, how about LGC approval?
So that's why I put that at the top. I got him to run the numbers just so I could give you guys the information with the understanding, if he went this route, it would have to go through the LGC for approval first. And I don't know, with folks not being able to go in the office, I don't know how long that list is what the wait time is to get on their docket for their commissioners for debt approval. I'm kind of on the fence anyway. They really looked at us the last couple of years for our fund balance. So I don't know. I don't know.
And that was one thing we talked about, was how many other counties are going to be restructuring debt possibly, so that they don't have to go into the fund balance or increase taxes so much.
Well, I would almost bet that they've already been having their meetings without anybody requesting it about restructuring loans.
And thinking about it, the DSS is the most expensive one, but it's paid off in 2 years. And that's what, Kim and I discussed. That would be the easiest thing to lower that big payment, but it's paid off in 2 years. Let's get that thing, the school, I got it back. Get it paid off, and let's have that money to start applying toward another debt. That's right. 2 years.
That's right.
So I mean, like I said, back to the high school, that's kind of easy. Yes, it ends in 2 years. If you want to save a little bit, that, like I said, that takes into account having to pay the legal fees, and that's how you come out to the good in 2 years over time. Like I said, for this one, for the DSS, I mean, it was a great thought to try to do it this way, and I think he even told me after 10 years, I asked about the threshold, he said it just keeps going up. The interest rate just kept going up.
But we're currently at 2.89.
Right.
And if we went 10 years, we would only go to 2.92.
Right.
And
So
we've got 5 years left.
Right.
So we extended 5 years, and it's only very minimal interest. You're going to pay more interest unless you get that influx of revenue coming in, which is what you can't bank on, but that's what I would bank on.
Because when I did the total savings at the bottom, I based it off of, my first sheet. This is how much we have left to pay in interest based on this current schedule. So when he gave me the 2.5 at the lower payment, that cost us more money to do it that way. Just like for the 8-year and the 10-year, even paying it off at 5, that's actually more expensive. That's $20,000 more expensive, or $33,000 more expensive that we're going to pay to refinance it. Right, right.
Approve it 5 years and save $2,000 this year. Ken's figures, not my figures.
Yes.
GC approval, if we extend the DSS
Mhm.
and we went for LGC approval, what would be in the 8 years, the 10 years?
Well, I mean, honestly, we're talking about, we would paying it at the end, 5 years. If we extend it out 8 years, we're essentially paying 20,000 more than if we did nothing right now. The current interest, because this loan we have to pay off. And is it September 2025? We would pay a total of $68,654.89. That's over the next 6 payments. That's our total. So when I did that same math, looking at these different schedules he sent me for interest and looking at for the 8-year and the 10-year, we would have a penalty by paying early.
Right.
In interest and penalty, well, the interest alone, we'd be paying $83,000, almost $84,000 versus if we did nothing right now, we would have paid 68. I guess that's what I'm looking at. Yes, you can save on your total payment on the books right now, but unless, you refinance it again, I'm looking at the long term, you're paying more,
$20,000.
$20,000 more.
Unless you, after 2 years when DSS is paid off.
So, but let's look at it in the term of years.
Mhm.
How many years are we talking about?
This one we have 6, or wait, over here.
Yeah. So
The-
I'm paying, if it's, let's say we went 10 years and it's $20,000 more, okay? Am I saying correctly? That's just $2,000 more a year to make
Well,
6?
no, if you look at, it would depend on the year because the interest rate changes based on, because it's not a fixed principal.
Mhm.
So if we're paying less in principal, then I can't really tell you. I mean, I can do it on a spreadsheet. I was trying to do it, but it got so long.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to,
Well, if it freed up $60,000 more and it costs you $2,500 in interest, it's freeing up $60,000 more every year.
I don't want to say yes without crunching those. I don't want to, I mean, it sounds,
And see, that's what I'm going back to, Jack, retiring the debt in 2 years. You then put that money right on to that.
And if we get well,
mhm.
and it freed up $60,000 more on this loan, we can put that $60,000 pay that off early because there's no penalty on the other one. This is the one with the penalty, I think.
No, they both have it.
They both have a penalty.
But it's $3,000 penalty.
Yeah, it's just 1% off. It's
Yeah.
1% on whatever your remaining principal
Okay.
is that you're trying to pay off.
So that, I mean, it could make sense there.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I agree. If we went this route, then the thought would be, or whatever extra we have, it should go towards paying this principal off.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
or at least sticking to the same schedule we have here and not keeping it for the 10. Because it is, if you did pay it,
I'd almost want to set up a restricted fund
but you could do
just
that.
for that.
That is the debt service, something we can do. So I can look into seeing what kind of process it is with the LGC, just to,
It takes several months to get.
Well,
on
what
that
I would
agenda.
do, well, things they might be on the fast track because everybody's budget is coming up at the same time. And it might be worth sending an email to LGC and just simply ask the question, have any other counties requested ideas or thoughts or approvals on restructuring loans because of COVID-19?
Throw that part in there.
For that reason. And just see, not requesting, not mentioning any of our loans, just,
well, I had already sent Sharon an email, I guess it was a couple months back when I had started this process of looking into this, getting ready for next year's budget.
Right.
And I told her what I was trying to do, because I was trying to figure out, do I have to go through their approval for any changes, or, and then she sent me to whoever the gentleman is that handles that section, and so they knew that was the question I was asking.
And tell her you're not thinking outside the box, tell her.
And they have been meeting, I just pulled up their agenda, they have been meeting, and
It just seemed like on some of those webinars I was on, and they were, like Sharon was on the conference call, that it was, if you need to get on, their agenda, you need to do it now, because they were pushed back. I mean,
and
So
they're
they're passing that interim budget.
and they maybe zooming their meetings too. which-
they
Yeah.
are, because that's what I was looking, the ones that were on the May were not for any refinancing, they were all just for, it did say, it said financing agreement. Of course, I guess that could be refinancing, because it doesn't say anything else. And even the one for April, they just say financing.
well, can you go back behind me on these numbers and see?
I've already done it real quick. on my
Okay.
calculator. I'm just messing. Yeah, I got you. Well, and I think that they would, I'm looking at this letter that the Honorable J. Ray Freeman III received on April 23rd, April 23rd, 2020. That we're gonna have to sign, anything not to go toward a fund balance to dip into creative thinking. Well, I don't know what else I call it today, Kim. Probably some other bad words. And that's the only reason why I asked her to do the 18 year, just to see what we were up against.
Mhm.
And what the options are.
It's a good idea.
Natalie, can you, well, can we finish?
Yeah,
Oh, Can you bring us, or email, bring it to the meeting next week, the Fund 21 breakdown of what's left and what's outstanding?
When you mean outstanding, you mean,
What's potentially left to be done? I think you said there was
Okay,
a small,
okay.
a window or something.
right, they're repairing some broken windows, cameras that need to be put in.
Are they gonna put handrails on the front doors?
The Historical Society is doing that. Well, I don't know if they've contacted the person yet, but they are responsible for that, because they've already talked to me about it. And they said, they had even said 2 years ago that once everything was said and done, they would take care of that.
So if there was $15,000 or $20,000 left of stuff like Jack was talking about earlier that could wait possibly, how do we amend that ordinance or something back from 13?
Like I said, we'll have to look through how to
And
do
it should be in
that.
and I included that with I'm sorry, Nick, statement of revenue and expenditures. So there's the regular, and then for all of our perpetual accounts, when I say perpetual, it's like the big projects. I hadn't been including that before because some of the numbers were kind of incorrect in the system just from the conversion, and I didn't want to give you guys off the wrong numbers that I knew weren't right, so.
And can that be done by amendment or?
That's what I said, we'll have to look and see, since that one was set by ordinance.
And when will we be eligible for lottery funds again?
at least 3
Two or
years.
3 years, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, because we had just done 1 or 2.
But the lottery is also down,
Yeah.
just so you know. That was brought
It's
up
not
in
doing
one
as
of,
well.
that was brought up in one of the, I don't know if it's the one we watched or one that I was participating in. Lottery numbers are down as
What
well.
about ABC sales? Is that one of our revenues?
One
I
of
think
the-
that's a.
That was there in ours, because there were some places that were thinking ABC sales were gonna go down, and I told her, I didn't think ours were probably gonna get affected. But the ABC money, that goes like to the sheriff's office, that's a specific line, and then there's also a 5-cent tax per bottle that goes directly to mental health. So that's not
A revenue source.
right, a true revenue source for us.
A lot of our funding it comes to us just to go back out to somebody else.
Right.
And are we expecting any updates on the Medicaid enrollments, 376 or anything? Or any possibility of that changing?
Like I said, and I can't remember if that was the email that went out to everybody or if that was just the one, when Ms. Holly asked me about it.
I didn't know during the calls, y'all had calls the last couple of days. I didn't know if, because that's a significant amount.
Right.
Also.
I mean, like I said, when I was on the call with, I can't remember, Susan, she was one of them that came to speak. We're hoping that the 10% that we should receive in August will still get it, and or if we don't, that what we received in March, the 390-some thousand, we're not going to have to pay any of that back, because I think when they're looking at actual numbers, it's going to be through March, right before things.
Because the election, the way that cycle is,
Wait,
we talked about that at the DSS meeting, how the cycle is. But that's another avenue of revenue that could possibly come in.
right.
That
So-
we're counting for zero right now, I think.
So for example, if, let's say we do get that money in March, like we normally do, 90% of whatever we're gonna get. And, we don't touch it, and then we get our 10%, then we see what happens in August. If we haven't spent any of it, it's just going to our fund balance to help us in the next year. It's just not there for our budget numbers right now.
And see, that's the one thing that bothered me, Jack, about the interim budget. We're talking 21%, but now I think, now the county manager said she could use 10%.
Yeah.
If we asked her to. So there's a lot of what ifs. I'd rather plan for the best and not raise taxes or go into the fund balance than, oh, hey, we raised taxes 5 cents and then we get all this money back and we could have not raised taxes. I'm looking at it from that, that side of it.
And the flip side, and the reason we're being conservative, is if you don't get that money, then come January, February, you're gonna be back at the table reducing your budget.
And you don't have the leverage at that point.
Right.
And you don't have
You go back to
the,
the
you don't
fund
have the 12 months to get that money back. You got to get it from
Right.
what's left. And with our fund balance too, how much above 8% is it?
I can't remember the number. I think I remember in it wasn't in your audit book, but it was in that discussion, the presentation. I think it was just 55 days worth that we had in there, that we could pay. So, I mean, that's not even 2 months. That's why we only did the interim budget for 1 month.
And, Mr. Chairman, I know we talked about that the cost of election is not in this, I call it the guesstimate. So we need to meet with them as soon as possible, so they know what those costs are. But they need to know all the costs that we're gonna do a budget.
And
That's right.
why the 1 cent? There's been houses built this year. I look at the inspector's report and they're closing files and files every month. Why is it going down from?
Like you asked that earlier, I told you that'd be a Chris question, and I hear this next week.
I'm wondering if did he take a percentage for conservative?
I'm
We'll have to
not guessing at anything of inflation that he can.
Cumulative, but that's
I did look,
I've already got, and I have.
I mean, and I don't know, there's more properties, so why wouldn't the taxes?
I've made a note.
But we've collected, once I finally got my system up, we have collected at over 6.3 million in just that one line, that current property taxes. That doesn't
Yeah, we've
include.
done good with collections, I
Yeah,
think.
that doesn't include delinquent, that doesn't include what the figure I gave you for the landfill. I mean, that's just property taxes.
Well, because the Board of Elections came up, we do need to meet with them and we don't need to tarry on that. Can you set a meeting up?
I need a date that all 5 of you, or 2 dates that all 5 of you can agree upon,
5:30.
okay?
Sunday night.
Mhm.
It won't be a ballgame on TV, so.
I'm through the Zoom by 5, so any day, any night I'm fine.
Is 5:30 too early?
Oh, no.
Thursday nights, a lot of times it's not good for me.
How about,
About next Thursday at 5:30.
how about Tuesday?
You mean like next
Like next
Tuesday
Tuesday.
before you meet on Wednesday?
Well, let's,
Oh,
no,
thank you, Ned.
You're welcome.
We meet Wednesday at 6:30. How much time does that
how
have?
about the 1st of June? Because next week is Memorial Day weekend after that.
Yeah, we can't go nowhere.
No, but I mean, it's just in May.
Or
And give them time to get their schedule.
May 27th would work for me, the Wednesday night.
Like I said, if you give me 2 nights,
When do they usually meet the 4th
I don't know.
Thursday or something? It's on the
It's
website.
on the website. I'll have to go back and look. I don't remember.
If we give them June the 27th and we give them the Monday of that week.
I
June.
want to go at June.
June,
May.
How about May?
May,
May,
I'm sorry,
the
thank you.
25th is the holiday.
June through
The 25th is a holiday, and that's that Monday.
Yeah, that's Memorial.
Memorial Day, 27th is a Wednesday.
All right, somebody else?
I'm looking to see when they have their regular meeting, so they had already had a meeting planned.
You say 28th not a good day for you, Commissioner? Huh?
Well, no, what is this 4th Thursday? What is the 4th Thursday? Have our more commission?
4th Thursday.
I can't be on the
28th.
28th either.
You can,
Is it 28th?
okay.
It is the 4th Tuesday of each month at 6.
And Jack said he couldn't meet the 28th either.
So what about the 26th
That
is
is,
the 4th Tuesday, so they meet at 6.
Can we ask them for us to meet with them and be first on their agenda?
Or we meet with them at 5:30, and they have, so it's our meeting, then they have their meeting at 6.
Oh, yeah, that's better, yeah.
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 I've got a Board of Health meeting, but I'll miss out for this.
They're already gonna be somewhere,
now, I'm not sure, do you know, Melissa, how she did her April meeting? Or did they have one?
but they got 5 and we've got,
5. I know that they have had a meeting by phone. I'm assuming that was their April meeting.
that'll be after May
If we
22nd.
social distance, can't we go over 10?
After May 22nd as well, it's probably gonna change, so that would be,
If phase 3 is supposed to start June 1st, right?
Well, suppose, I guess it's that.
Yeah.
But the 3rd of June is Wednesday.
I'm good.
No, that's fine.
3rd of June,
Natalie, you and I might not be good then.
how does,
Third day of the month.
Well, that too, but school stuff in the year that's not been announced yet.
I was gonna say, I know on the 4th at 5
You're
o'clock.
out before.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make any plans for Natalie right that week because something's coming down the pipe and it's a little bit important to
Because they've got 5th grade and then 8th grade. 8th grade is on the 4th, and we've already been given our time at 5 o'clock to be in the parking lot.
Yeah, and 5th grade's coming, we just don't know when it's gonna be.
okay.
So we want to go 27th before their meeting? How long a meeting do you anticipate, Natalie?
That would be up to you, but I mean, I just think that you need to, as a board, need to reiterate from board to board instead of county manager to elections director. I think it needs board to board to reiterate the seriousness of the budget and why you feel there needs to be one stop because of the budget.
Well, you don't want to call somebody to a meeting for 30 minutes unless they're your employees. So we set a meeting time frame for 1 hour. If it doesn't go that long, and in 45 minutes, we adjourn.
Yeah, I don't think we need to drag it on.
So we're looking at 27th?
We have a meeting at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Wait, 26, 26.
Oh, 26, yes.
26. That's
27th.
Tuesday. That's
Right.
my meeting is at 6.
Oh, their meeting,
Yes. Their meeting is the 26th.
so that's what we're going to shoot for, the 26th.
Well, if you're gonna do 1 hour though, they have a meeting that starts at 6.
So we started at 5:30,
So have a
turnout meeting by 6, so then we start their meeting.
But we
Why
can
don't
do
we do
it in
that?
30 minutes.
Yeah,
No need to drag it on.
that puts a time constraint.
Yeah, why don't we do
I'd be
that?
okay with that,
Okay,
So the 26th,
as long as Commissioner Reed's not gonna be lonely.
okay. So I will contact Katia tomorrow for May the 26th at 5:30. Now, I will get back with you about how she says they are going to meet so we can figure out how we need to meet.
Where we want to have,
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know
if
what,
they're meeting in person at their place, then we sort of, I guess we could, you got nothing else to do, right? Let's set up another Zoom.
they can sit on one end of her
If
office.
they're meeting in person, at their office and following the guidelines, they can meet with the camera and see them. We can both have 2 virtual meetings in 1 meeting.
That would work, I mean, that won't put you in a bind or anything, that'll.
I think we can figure that out. And if they're meeting electronically, then we can handle that too.
So that would be, so we'll plan on here, as long as we didn't have anything.
Bless you.
Okay,
I
settle on
think you
that.
sneeze today, everybody kind of looks strange.
you covered it real well.
Put a mask back on.
So do you have any other suggestions that you would like for me to consider that we've not discussed, or specific positions, specific details?
Thank you for all the work y'all have done.
Yeah, for the interim budget, I mean, that's,
So we could have done an interim budget for 2 months
Yeah.
at one time, couldn't we?
60 days.
You were talking about the allotments of expenditures.
So we could double this. We don't want to do that, do we?
You don't have enough money in fund balance.
That's what I was thinking.
Now,
Yes.
the library amount, the $90,000.
Mhm.
They're not technically a county run because they've got different, they opened up, and somebody asked me this question, and they're required masks.
Right.
We have no control over that.
Right.
We're just giving them $90,000. So I think when you were talking earlier about cuts, that's a potential one. That's, I mean, everything's on the table, I guess.
Anything's on the table. They did not ask for an increase. I will let you know. They did not ask for an increase.
The library couldn't be on the table.
Fund,
There's Albemarle,
Everything's in
we
the packet. She said it's on the table.
But the thing about it is that library, students with computers and all, there's high demand.
Well, actually not, because they just opened back up.
Well, I meant they,
You know, they have-
normal
they have
times,
rates.
because a lot of kids who are doing virtual learning, before this thing happened, they had to be in a place where they can take a test and have somebody there to administer, and they, yeah.
And I would be curious, is our funding over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and their hours, has their hours decreased and our
No.
funding?
It's
stayed the
hovered right
same?
around 98,000.
Their
for
funding-
Quite a few years.
right, their funding increased, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, and that was only by, I think, 3,000 or 4,000, but their hours have increased.
Yeah.
Because the The director who just left changed their hours, so they are open more hours
Yeah.
now.
The reason I was thinking that that wouldn't be on the table is because it's Albemarle Regional Library that conducts the operation. And the books don't belong to us. The books, move around, and we're part of it. I thought of that more.
So like PCG a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's Gates, Burford, Northampton, and
Bertie,
Bertie.
But we're not under a true contract.
I've never seen one. Have you ever seen one listed in any of the files? I've never seen one.
Okay. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of money in that to who you need.
No, I just was looking at it a while ago, and somebody asked about the
I
math.
think that would cause a lot of uproar too, because people like the library.
Mr. Chairman, I'm with my second page here. It says something about willingness to adjourn.
Yeah.
So you're writing that down, sir.
You
Is that a motion?
Natalie, do you have anything you want to share? Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
My paper says that I can second that motion.
Your motion for adjournment as well as a second.
Yes, sir.
Any discussion?
Just a reminder, you have a meeting next Wednesday.
We do have on the 20th.
6:30.
Call for a
Well,
vote.
excuse me, we might need to have a closed session meeting, but it can start about 6:15, but I will let you know.
Call for a vote for the adjournment.
And that meeting will be,
Well, as she stated in her, she's not 100% sure, it might be here, but we will let you know.
okay.
All right. Is the motion for discussion, Mr. Chair?
All in favor?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hearing no nays, we're staying adjourned.
I wanted to discuss that a little bit more.
no, I was going to call for a point